So you want to make a bowl, but you don't have a lathe. I don't have a lathe, you don't have a lathe. Can we make a bowl with the table saw only? The answer, yes. Let me show you how to do it. So to start off, you're gonna need a big old hunk of wood. So you can either go ahead and buy a big one like we did from a local hardwood distributor. This is about 1 foot by 1 foot and it is 3 inches thick. It was a $30 piece of wood. Or you can take some smaller pieces. We put 2 ash pieces that are also 3 inches thick and we glued those together. But we're gonna show you how to make it with this big old hunk of cherry. First thing we're gonna do is get this cut down to 9 inches by 9 inches. The reason that we're doing 9 inches by 9 inches is all based on our table saw blade. Since we're using an 8 1/4 inch table saw blade, which is a pretty average blade for a job site table saw, we know that this blade cannot cut wider than 8 1/4 inches because it's an 8 1/4 inches. You got me. You're gonna need 2 jigs for this project. Both of them are very simple. I'm gonna explain the first one first. So this is a circle jig. It's a circle. That's it. So why do you...
How'd you get it in there?
Call the fire department. So this circle is 8 5/8 inches in diameter. The reason that this is 8 5/8 inches in diameter is because our table saw blade is 8 1/4. So we're gonna make it a little bit bigger so then we have some play on each side. So let me show you this on the table saw so you can kind of get a gauge of what we're doing. So when we measure this up and we put this blade perfectly in the middle of this, you can see this blade is all the way up, can't go up any further, and there's a little bit of gap here, and there's a little bit of gap here. Obviously we haven't centered this up yet, and then there's a bunch of room here. So once we get our big chunk cut in a circle, this is how we're gonna actually make the bowl. How I made this was with a router circle jig. I used a tiny little plunge bit and I put it in my router and I had that plunge bit come through here, so sticking up, and then you can see this nail here. This was for a smaller jig I made, but you nail that into the piece of wood and then you put your router in here, so then you can just go ahead and make that perfect circle on that piece of wood. You have to do like 10 or 20 passes, but eventually you'll get that perfect circle cut out. I'm sure there's a bunch of videos on YouTube if you want to learn how to make this the exact way I did, so search around, but it's pretty self-explanatory. The next jig is just a miter sled. You don't need a miter sled for this. You can make your own, a really easy one. All this is 2 pieces in the back that go into the tracks of your table saw. How we use this is, you can see these holes here, I've done it a few times. We put a nail through here and then into the bottom of our board here, and then you put it down, and that way you can spin it, and you can go through the table saw and cut a piece off, spin it, cut a piece off, spin it. So that's what we're gonna do right now. So let me show you exactly how that works. Like we said, the circle jig in diameter is 8 5/8 inches. We need to divide that by 2, which is going to be 4 5/16 inches. So now we go over to our miter sled, and anywhere in the center, we're going to measure from where the blade cuts 4 5/16 inches and make a mark. So now on that mark, we're gonna take a tiny little bit and we're just gonna go all the way through. Now you're gonna flip your miter sled over, find that hole that you just made, and go ahead and put a nail through it, all the way through. Now you've got your nail sticking up 4 5/16 inches away from your cut line. Now you're going to take your piece and find the center. Make a line, one corner there, make a line. And that is our center. Now with that same small bit, you're gonna go ahead and drill into that little crosshairs. That little hole is going over that nail. Line it up. And then push down a little bit. But now, this piece is in there, and it'll slide. Now we're gonna take this whole thing over to the table saw and let's get that circle cut out. While you're cutting this, you're gonna wanna keep your hands away from the blade, so use a push stick, use a push block, that's what we're gonna do. And don't try to take off way too much. Every time you make a cut, adjust it, maybe an 1/8 inch, maybe a 1/16 of an inch. It's gonna take a while, that's okay. We want that circle to come out perfect, so it's worth the wait. If your blade's the same size as mine, the blade can't raise up far enough. Once you've got almost all the chunks cut off the side, it's starting to look like a circle, you're just gonna put the piece next to the blade and just slowly spin it, and that's what's really gonna give you a perfect refined circle. After all that, you'll be left with this. We've got that chunk on the side here. We'll deal with that a little bit later, but here it is, your circle. Now grab your circle jig. Perfect. It'll have a little bit of wiggle, which is totally fine. That is actually needed so this can spin on the table saw. So now let's get this over to the table saw get this secured, and let's get to work. We're over at the table saw. We've got our jig placed. Now we just need to measure it, make sure it's perfectly centered. So put your blade up all the way.
Did you unplug the table saw?
No.
I'm thinking maybe we should for this.
Probably. We're just measuring to make sure your blade is the same distance away from the edge of the circle on both sides here, and then both sides here. Now we're gonna clamp it down to the table saw. Now that we've got this clamped down and measured out perfectly, put your table saw blade all the way down. Then we're gonna place our piece. So it's gonna be really hard for me to show you this part because this is gonna be covering the blade. What you're gonna do is put your blade all the way down, place your piece on it, mark one of the corners, put the blade up one full spin. So it won't go up very much. That's what we want. We don't want it to go up too much. Put it on, have that piece there, and then you're gonna give it one full spin with the table saw blade running. And then once you get this, a full revolution, you're gonna go up again, another spin, and do that, and keep doing that, and we'll do a few spins here and there, and then we'll show you what it's looking like. So a few tips when you're doing this. When you put the bowl on, make sure that the blade is completely down level to the table, and then turn it on, and once it's turned on, then you raise the blade up one turn of the handle. You wanna make sure that you're not raising the blade before the blade is running. And you see we left that square shape on the top there because it's a lot easier to hold rather than if the bowl was circular already. You need to make sure that your piece of wood is at least 3 inches thick or thicker than the actual height the blade will go, because if it's not, then your blade could poke through and you run into some problems. All right, guys, here it is. So we decided to leave these edges a little bit thicker. I just think it looks nice. I mean, this is plenty of space for a bowl, for a soup, or whatever you're gonna put in it. Let's go ahead and get these chunks off and get this looking like a real bowl. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut them off as close as we can to this with the jigsaw first, and then we're gonna use the flush trim bit on the router. So how we're gonna make sure that we're not cutting into our bowl when we jigsaw is we're gonna take our drill with a little drill bit on it, and you're just gonna go about 1/8 inch away from the bowl and screw all the way in. Go ahead on jigsaw and cut on the outside of these lines here, and then you can kind of eyeball this, but make sure that you don't take too much off here, so just kind of really be guessing and checking as you cut. Now we're gonna get the excess cut off with the flush trim bit. As you see, our flush trim bit is not high enough, it's not big enough to get it all off in one pass, so we're gonna have to do a couple passes. We'll get this side flattened down to here, and then we'll get the bottom flattened down afterwards, but no big deal. Routed, sanded, we did 120, 220, and 320. This thing is soft. So now it is time to water pop it. Water popping is just spraying water on it, and that's the first time you'll see what it'll look like once it's nice and coated with some mineral oil. Water popping is just to get all those little grain hairs to stand up, and then we can go ahead and sand it again when it's dry. Once it's dry, we'll hit it with 320 again, coat it, and then we'll be done. All right, we're gonna coat it now with Howard mineral oil. We only use Howard because it is the best product on the market. And then we're gonna hit it with some conditioner. There it is, guys. This thing is awesome. Look at those edges. That is so smooth, and it looks so nice. If you want to pick up some Howard products for yourself, we'll put some links in the description. You can use exactly what we did, so you can make this bowl the exact same way we did. So yeah, guys, that's gonna do it. This thing is awesome. Please comment down below if you've ever made a bowl like this, or if you're gonna make a bowl like this, and shoot us an email if you do. Send us a photo of it. We love to see the stuff you guys make. So again, thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Guys, if you like that video and you want to learn how I made this cool shelf, click right here for that. And if you want to see 100 woodworking projects, click right here for that.